Maybe it's recording. I don't know.
Mhm.
Yeah, it looks like
Isn't
it's
there
recording.
like a little
Yeah,
record
it
button at the bottom?
It's recording.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
So I'm just going to kind of give some intro stuff to those that might not have started and might want to watch it later. Complex fractions means there are fractions inside of the fractions, and the goal is to get them to a single fraction on top, a single fraction on the bottom, and then you realize when you're dividing, you can turn that into multiplication by the reciprocal. So since this one was already at that stage, we just immediately turned it into multiplication by the reciprocal. And we brought things together, multiplied across. On this problem, the numerator had to be simplified into a single fraction. To do that, we got a common denominator. And then we took the division problem, because that's what a complex fraction is, turned it into multiplication by the reciprocal, and simplified to 9/4. This time it was the denominator that had two fractions, but they had a common denominator already. So we simplified that. We wrote it as a division problem. We turned it into multiplication by the reciprocal, and we simplified to our final answer. So the next couple problems are going to start getting a little more challenging, each problem being a little bit harder than the one before it. So we ready for this?
Yeah.
All right. So what I like to do, and you've noticed on the last couple problems, I circled one thing in blue. I like to circle each part and show that I'm doing them separately, okay? So I'm going to do this numerator in blue. I'll do the denominator in green, and then we'll bring them together after that. So what needs to happen on the numerator?
Multiply 6 by 3.
So how do I get a common denominator here?
X over 3 minus 18 over 3. So multiplying by 3.
Right, I get the common denominator. This just doesn't have any denominator other than 1. And so then I can bring it into one fraction, x minus 18 over 3. How about the green one?
Multiply the top and bottom of 10 by x.
Yeah, so I'm going to have 10x over x plus 4 over x. So 10x plus 4 all divided by x. And now we can bring those two things together. So x minus 18 over 3 divided by 10x plus 4 over x. Instead of division, we will
Multiply by the reciprocal.
That's right, multiply by the reciprocal. And there's really nothing that'll simplify away here. We can factor this to be 2 times 5x plus 2. But it's still not going to let us get rid of anything. So we're just going to bring everything together. I'm going to leave this in the factored version, but do 2 times 3 is 6. And really the only reason I left it in the factored version is because I like to have things what looks neater. I think factored form looks a little bit nicer, but it's not required. The only reason to factor, and it's an important reason, is to see if anything will divide away or cancel out. As I told you two earlier, in past sections, we've worried about excluded values, but we're not doing that with complex fractions. We're not going to worry about excluded values in this section. Any questions from either of you? Okay. So I'm going to have you two help guide me on this problem. Do I need to do anything on top? No, it's already one fraction. what about here on the bottom?
You can multiply 4 over x plus 1 by x.
Uh-huh.
And then 6 over x by x plus 1.
That's right. We have to get a common denominator. For some people, it might still help them to write out the least common denominator. If it does help you to do that, by all means, it's perfectly okay to write that out. If you don't need to do that anymore, if you've gotten comfortable with just what I'm showing here, that's okay also. So that's going to give me 4x plus 6x plus 6 over x times x minus 1, or
Where'd you
10x.
get this one from?
Say again?
Where'd you get
Emma?
mine?
Oh, I'm sorry, that should be a plus 1. Thank you. I looked up and saw the minus 2 here, and it caught my attention for a second. Okay, so now that we have these two fractions, to the top and the bottom are just single fractions, I can write them. We have 16 over x minus 2 divided by 10x plus 6 over x times x plus 1. Instead of division, we will do, Emma?
Multiplication by the reciprocal.
Multiplication by the reciprocal. And I'm going to go ahead and factor this also, just like we did last problem.
So you can cross it off.
Yeah, so what that does, in the last problem, it didn't allow us to simplify anything, did it? But here, it will. Okay. Sorry, Emma?
Is that Callie?
She's playing a game on the TV, which is on Nintendo Switch. And I just wanted her to turn the volume down some. Could y'all hear it?
Yeah.
It's nice background noise, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like it's loud, right?
No, it's fine.
It makes the math more pleasant.
They say it makes the math more pleasant, Callie. She's playing the new Animal Crossing game that came out.
Oh, yeah. Ooh.
So we have 8 times x plus 1 over x minus 2 and 5x plus 3. And that's our answer. Either of you have any questions about that one?
No.
How do you feel about the complex fractions so far?
I don't think it's that bad. Like, compared to, I feel like it just uses the same rules as the last lesson.
So what a complex fraction is it uses the add and subtract, and then the divide, right? It's combining sections 3.1 and 3.2 and 3.3 into one problem. Okay, I think we have a few more to go, 2 more problems to go. So, excuse me. Now you can probably see that it's gotten a little bit more complicated, hasn't it?
Yeah.
So if we look at this one, then this here is x plus 2, x minus 2. Is the first fraction missing any of that?
X plus 2.
So we're going to multiply that in. But the second fraction already has this x minus 2. It's okay. So that's going to give us 3x plus 6, and then a minus 6. or just 3x over x plus 2x minus 2. Okay. Questions there so far? Okay. In the green part, down at the bottom. Very similar. The first one's missing an x minus 2. And the second one's missing the x plus 2. Just for, I'm going to put this parentheses here. I've kind of done a lot there. I'm going to pause for a second before I go forward. So I got a common denominator by making the x minus 2's appear here. And this is missing x plus 2, so I did that. 3 times x minus 2 gave me the 3x minus 6. And 1 times x plus 2 gives me an x plus 2. And those are added together. Okay. So kind of bringing that together as 1. And I get 4x minus 4 over x plus 2, x minus 2. Factor out the 4, and I have 4 times x minus 1. So there's a lot to that, you know, but those are all the steps that you would have done if all I had given you was this green problem in section 3.3. You would have gone all the way to here. Right? So now, and this is a common thing, it doesn't have to happen this way, but most of the time in the problems that we give you, this next kind of thing is going to happen because we're trying to give you problems to make you work through all the steps. So we're going to write out our parts. The first one was 3x over x plus 2, x minus 2, and divided by 4 times x minus 1 over x plus 2, x minus 2. Isabella, what am I going to do?
Multiply by the reciprocal.
Multiply by the reciprocal. Kind of sounds like a broken record, but it's an important thing to remind ourselves every single time. And what do you notice happens in this problem and a lot of our problems?
Cancels.
Yeah, these x plus 2's are going to divide away. The x minus 2's are going to divide away. And all we're left with is the 3x over 4 times x minus 1. How do y'all feel about that?
Not too bad. There's a lot of steps.
It is a lot of steps, but that's really, you know, we will give you some harder problems just to really test you, but that's a pretty good problem for like on an actual test. Like that's a really good problem that you would see on a test.
Sort of fun.
What's that, Emma?
A little fun.
Well, they're puzzles, right? You're trying to see how they'll simplify away.
I like it.
So.
The one thing I was wondering, do you always have, I keep leaving it as like 3x over 4x minus 4.
Again, I'm going to factor them when I can, just so that if anything will divide away and simplify, I can see it.
Okay.
3x over 4x minus 4 is an acceptable answer. But if you go back to the prior problem, we hadn't done that factoring step, we might not have seen that those would simplify.
Got it.
Okay. So that's why I'm going to do it. Because if you had left this as 16 and this is as 10x plus 6, that would not be a correct final answer. All right. One last problem, and you can see we gave you a lot of space because it does have just like the last problem, a number of steps to it. So let's do this blue part. Is anything missing in the denominator of the first fraction? It's missing that x, isn't it? And then is anything missing here?
Yeah, x minus 5.
I'm going to have 6x plus x minus 5 over x times x minus 5, or 7x minus 5 over x times x minus 5. Okay? Now we'll do the denominator. It's going to be a very similar process. This first part is missing the x minus 5. And the second part is missing the x. I get 3x minus 15 when I multiply those two together, minus 2x over x times x minus 5, or simply x minus 15 over x times x minus 5. And now you can probably, you're both really good at this stuff. You can probably both see what's going to happen to the x and the x minus 5. Yeah, they're going to go away. But I don't want you to skip any steps until you're really, really comfortable. Most students need to show all of these steps to be successful. So I'm always going to show them in my work, at least for the time being. So I have 7x minus 5 over x times x minus 5 divided by the x minus 15. And you've both already told me before, so let's all three of us at the same time on a count of 3 say what we're going to do next. 1, 2, 3.
Multiply by the reciprocal.
So again, as we predicted, these are going to divide away, and we're just going to be left with a final answer, 7x minus 5 over x minus 15. And nothing will factor, nothing will simplify. That's just the answer. Any last questions on this? Okay, let me go ahead and stop the recording.